And welcome to tonight's Cabinet on the 29th of November. Okay, just like to remind you that this evening's meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. And we'll start by introducing everybody if we can. So I'm Sean Vincent and I'm the Chair of Cabinet. Jonathan?
Jonathan Emsel, I'm the portfolio holder for Transformation and Organisational Development.
I'm Trudy Mancini-Boyle and I'm Deputy Leader and Finance Portfolio Holder.
Good evening, I'm Jo Copplestone. I'm the Portfolio Holder for Economic Development.
Good evening, I'm Fran Wymark. I'm Portfolio Holder for Communities, Housing and Planning.
Good evening, I'm Judy Leggett and I'm the Portfolio Holder for Environmental Excellence.
Okay, thank you. Martin, did you want to come in?
Martin Morrell, I'm the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Martin. Trevor?
Chairman, thank you. Good evening. My name is Trevor Holden and I'm the Managing Director of Broadland Council.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Lorimer, Director of Resources.
Good evening. I'm Rodney Fincham, the Assistant Director of Finance.
Good evening. I'm Darren Slowther, Capital and Treasury Accountant.
Good evening. I'm Phil Courtier, Director of Place.
Good evening. I'm Simon Phelan, Assistant Director for Community Services.
I'm Jamie Sutterby. I'm Director of People and Communities.
Good evening. I'm Helen Mellors. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning.
Good evening. I'm Kirsty Burns, the Environmental Coordinator.
Hello, George Stanton, Assistant Director for Economic Growth.
Evening, Nick Howard, Assistant Director, Regulatory.
Hello, good evening. I'm Terry Munro, Community Safety and Interventions Lead.
Good evening. I'm Claire White, Democratic Services Manager.
Good evening. Emma Hodds, Chief of Staff and Monitoring Officer.
Okay, thank you. So we now know who everybody is. Okay, so any declarations of interest for anybody on tonight's agenda? No. There's no apologies for absence because you're all here, so lovely to see you. Minutes of the last Cabinet meeting on the 1st of November, starting at page 6. Can I take those as being accurate, or is there anything need changing or updating for anybody? No? Okay, I'll take those as being correct. I'll sign those off. I don't believe there's any public speaking. No public speaking. I can't actually see any non-cabinet members other than Martin from ONS, and you'll get your chance right about now. So over to Martin and ONS. Anything you want to say at this point in time, Martin?
No, I mean, all matters were agreed and represented.
Okay, so as we go through, if there's anything you want to come in on, just let me know.
Thank you.
That moves us on then to item 8, which is the Environmental Excellence Panel on page 12. Judy?
All right. I'd like the Cabinet to receive these minutes. Both agenda items are on our agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. We will receive your minutes. Thank you. Economic Success Panel, Jo?
Thank you, Sean. I'd ask Cabinet to receive the minutes of the Economic Success Panel, which was held on the 7th of November, and both the subjects are covered in our agenda this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Jo. We will receive those. And then Communities, Housing and Planning Panel, Fran.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just ask the panel to, Cabinet, to receive the minutes. The item is on the agenda tonight, best in class housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a packed agenda for all of your panels, so thank you for that. Okay, so it moves on then to item 11, the Strategic Performance and Finance Report for quarter 2, which is at page 28. Who's Debbie? You leading on this one? So
Yes,
over to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid Sinead Orcoin couldn't be here today. They've been on a training course, so you've got me instead to talk about performance. So sort of launching straight into the report that you've got in front of you. We have 27 performance targets that we look at, measures that we look at. And I'm pleased to say on page 41, there's a dashboard that that details that we've got 18 at the moment that are currently green. We have no reds, and there are 9 that amber. And amber means that they have slightly missed their target at the moment, or we're predicting them to miss. We are obviously watching those and taking mitigation where necessary to try and ensure they turn green. Further detail on each of those is given in a highlights in Appendix 2 on page 51. There is much further detail down there, and also we've also made mention in paragraph 3.34 on page 42 that obviously the cost of living at the moment, which is increasing across the UK since early 2021, we're highlighting that potentially these may have an impact in future months on some of these measures. But there is a report on the cost of living crisis coming alongside to this cabinet too. I would also like to say that in Appendix 3, we do have a mid-year update on the 2022-24 delivery plan, and that starts on page 81. Very happy to take any questions to do with the performance element.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything you want to add, Rodney, on the finance side?
Thank you. Sorry. Just a couple of points on the finance side. Like most organisations, we're affected by inflationary pressures at the moment. So you will see in the report, actually, we're looking at some overspends potentially in a couple of areas, particularly within our waste service, where the cost of fuel and things like that is feeding through the waste contract price. And we're also seeing pressures for demand on homelessness. And again, that's predicting an overspend this year. And there's a report further on this agenda looking at that in more detail. However, although we are seeing overspends on our core services, we're trying to mitigate these as much as possible to bring us back on budget. But we are, on the other hand, seeing buoyant investment income. A few months ago, we were getting interest rates of 0.1, 0.2%. But with the current economic situation, we're currently getting 4% on our investments, which is obviously giving us a significant return on the cash balances, which is more than offsetting our additional costs. So at this point in time, we're actually predicting an underspend for the financial year. With regard to capital, we're predicting to spend about £11 million this year, the 2 primary projects being the completion of the Food Innovation Centre and the purchase of the Horizon Centre, which members are both fully aware of. Just in the report, there's a couple of additional recommendations to normal. First of all, we're asking you to look to align the land charge fees and charges. And this is very much because we made the decision a few months ago to bring in a single system across Broadland and South Norfolk. The single system will deliver efficiencies and savings for the organisations. But as a result, we do need to make sure we align our fees and charges. And these fees and charges should be set to recover the cost of providing the service. So the cost of providing a land charge should be charged to the person asking for the land charge, as opposed to the council tax sort of paying for this generally out of their general council tax. So we are looking for an agreement to change those fees and charges. And the other recommendation we're looking for is very much, we want to bring forward some of our work on remote working. We see the opportunity to do this earlier than we anticipated to start with. So we are looking for approval to bring forward £135,000 of capital budget to actually allow us to deliver that in this financial year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Rodney. Trudy?
Thank you, Chair. Just first of all, I guess on the finances, you can see obviously the ups and downs of how the economy is going at the moment, and the increase in investment return is obviously very much welcomed. With regards to the land charges, what I would say, it is our responsibility to recover costs, and clearly we haven't been doing that previously, and it's only fair the person requesting the service pays for it, not every resident in Broadland. So although it is an increase in that service, it's a service you choose to have anyway, so I'm more than happy with that. And bringing the remote working work forward can only be a positive, so I can see no issue with that either. And rather than have to come back to me, with regards to the other part of the report, I'd just like to highlight really in my area is the green of the collection of business rates and again of council tax as well. But also it does highlight how the team are dealing with far more court calls and inquiries. But as usual, we always hold the hand of people that need the help. And it's showing that work, sitting with them and working out the best way of them paying their bills has meant we're on target with our council tax and business rates. So I'm really happy with that. I know the team are having to work a lot harder, but that helps our residents and that's the most important thing. So that's all I've got to say at the moment about the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trudy. Anything you want to add, Jonathan? When we get to that point. Okay, any questions, points, Judy?
I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to the fact that our recycling rate for 21-22, although perhaps not the official figure, but the unofficial figure or the draft figure is 50.6% recycling, of which dry recycling, either paper, cardboard, plastics, makes up 21.4%, and green waste and food makes up 29.2%. Looking forward, if I'm allowed to look forward at this time, we've actually collected 80 tonnes of textiles, small electrics and batteries since the April. And so that's 80 tonnes we've taken out of residual waste. Just one comment on one of the measures, the food waste. What we should really be measuring there is not the amount of food waste we collect, but the put out rate of the caddies, because we don't want to encourage people to have more food waste than they absolutely have to have. You know, don't buy too much food so you can't eat it all. So we just want to emphasize the right point. And disappointingly, there was some adverse comments of customer satisfaction, but by the way that data is collected, we aren't able to drill down and find out which particular aspect they were dissatisfied with. I think that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Judy. Fran?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a couple of measures on here, which I think are particularly pertinent, really. Well, it's measure 18. It's number of residents supported to live independently. And we've done a lot of work around disabled facilities grant, and we continue to do so, particularly through our new independent living assistance policy, which I know is very long, but it's given lots and lots of new grants that we can do to jump in and help people early. And I think particularly around motor neuron disease, a serious illness grant is there to help people sooner rather than later, and a forget-me-not grant as well for people with dementia, which I think has been particularly helpful for people. So I think I just wanted to highlight how well we're doing in that area, and how we are managing to get the adaptations in place to help people remain in their home, which is really, really important. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is it's measure 24, which is around the number of planning applications made within statutory timescales. There's been lots of challenges people have brought up about planning, and we know there's been challenges, and we're looking to reshape and improve our business. We're doing that, but I believe our targets, we've consistently been above our target, which are significantly higher than the national measures. So we're beating all those targets. So I just wanted to say we're in a good place, and we're looking to get into a better place. But I just think it's important to flag that up. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Fran. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to highlight a couple of things. Firstly, external funding to support growth. I'm really pleased that the Council has been awarded about 1.3 million for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and also from DEFRA under the Rural England Prosperity Fund, almost 570,000 of capital funding, which we'll talk about in item number 16 to support businesses. Also mentioned in measure 12, I just want to mention our business builder scheme, which was funded from the Norfolk Strategic Fund. That started in October, the beginning of Q3, and we're doing very well in business support, training and mentoring our businesses and giving grant aid. So I'm delighted with that. And may, while I'm just speaking, just pick up a couple of things within the delivery plan. On page 85, there is a little typo in the first box under Help Hub, and it says 20,104 calls taken from residents asking. Maybe we want to delete asking. And then also on page 89, growing our economy, it says promote our areas as a place that businesses want to invest in and grow, attracting investment from our areas. I think that's probably a little bit of a mistake, that one. I would suggest this needs to say attracting inward investment from outside our area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe. Jonathan?
I did want to say something, sorry. Yeah, just talking about the staff, the customer satisfaction. Obviously, measure 2, it is amber, but we are doing a lot of work moving forward on that. That was obviously a baseline before where we hadn't been doing anything on that. So there's a lot of work we've been doing on that, and I'm really pleased to see that we are challenging ourselves. Obviously, when we do get more calls, it can be more difficult. So this is a really quite challenging time to be sort of focusing on that, and I think it's all really positive and it's going in the right way. I'd also like to focus on reference 3 and 4 being the staff satisfaction and the staff absence levels both being green, which are obviously very positive, and we hope that the staff are very pleased. And we have got all the excitement of moving to the Horizon building next year, so there's obviously more that the staff will be satisfied about with that. Reference 5, the staff retention levels. This is a challenging time. There are a lot of opportunities out there, to be fair, at other councils where everybody's looking for staff. So we will struggle with that. But then if you look at reference 6, the apprenticeships and the graduates that are being brought in, we are working very hard to train up and use our own people and promote and, work with them. So these are all very positive things that I think we should be very proud of.
Well said, Jonathan. Thank you for that. Back to you, Trudy.
Yes, so I would like to propose the recommendations on page 45, 8, 1 through to 6.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other points? Anything from ONS, Mon?
This was voted for unanimously by the panel to approve the recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I think overall this just shows how well the one team is operating and how well it's performing for the council in delivering the services that we're after and that our residents want and cherish. So that's really good to see. So the recommendations are on page 45, which have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you for that. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 12, the Treasury Management Q2 report, which is at page 153, which I think you're doing, aren't you, Darren?
Thank you, Chairman. This report gives an overview of the Council's Treasury position at the Q2 point to the end of September. As Rodney's noted, interest that we've been earning on our investments has increased throughout the year as rates have risen, and as those investments that we've had are now maturing that have been at the lower rates, we're now investing more at the higher rates, and that's shown a steady increase throughout the year. We've had investments as high as 5%. A couple of months ago. Investment rates seem to be levelling off now between 3.5 and 4%. And our Treasury advisors expect rates to rise to about 5% over the next few months, and then they will level off. We've derived income from a number of sources, from our cash balances, money market funds, our long-term investments, plus income that we hold with a diversified income fund managed by an external partner. We've had no borrowing requirements to date in 22-23 for Broadland. The report also includes our performance against the potential indicators that are set in the Treasury strategy. There have been no breaches of those indicators this year. There's also the inclusion of an economic update from our Treasury advisors link. The recommendations in the report are to endorse the content of the report and to note that it complies with our strategy and to note the potential indicators for the first 6 months of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Thank you for taking us through those. Trudy?
Yes, thank you. I think really Darren has said it all. This does come back to Cabinet and Council twice a year to review. It's pleasing to see again no breaches, and as I'd already mentioned, the increase in investment income. On page 154, there's a table of where our investments are, and as you can see from that, we have stuck to our ethical investments, which obviously we requested at the beginning of the year to make sure that we did invest in that way across the board. And so I am therefore more than happy to put forward the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 153.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair. Yes, this is an excellent report, and it's really encouraging to see that the council is getting a good return on our investments. So I'm happy to second this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or points for clarity? No? Okay, well, as I say, it all looks very healthy, and it's pleased to hear that we are doing things in the appropriate way, in the correct way, and also getting a far healthier return now, which is always pleasing. Okay, so recommendations are on page 158. They've been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you for that. Okay, that moves on then to item 13, best in class housing, temporary accommodation. I need to slow down. On page 161. Good evening, gentlemen. So who's leading on this one? Mike? No, Richard?
Thank you, Chairman. So the report tonight, I'll start off, Chairman, thank you. And then Richard will go through some of the details. The report tonight is looking at Broadland Council's response to the crisis we've got in temporary accommodation. We've got two fundamental issues. One is an increase in demand through a mix of COVID, cost of living, and a decrease in supply, which has come from COVID, but also nutrient neutrality in other areas as well. So we've got a double whammy there, which is affecting our performance at the moment. Where we're coming from is a really, really strong point and a place. Broadland Council has got an exemplar record in supporting people, those people most in need, and we've got an exceptional housing function consolidated by our Help Up approach, which really helps to embed that early help and prevention ethos. So building on where we are now, we're now looking at a business model, a business case that has a really strong note to the future in financial terms. We need to be financially sustainable, but it also, and the business case then comes to life as well in terms of supporting the most vulnerable in our district. So we know that housing is a fundamental basis to ensuring that those who need support have got a solid base to live from, and if you've got a firm and solid home, you can then build on that in your recovery from issues that are coming from cost of living. So we think we've got a mix of a good solid business case and a carry on the Broadland ethos of supporting the most vulnerable. Richard, do you want to just highlight that a bit?
I was just going to point some more of the numbers behind the figures here, where the demand and supply issues are. Regionally, we've got 26% reduction in private rental sector, It's taking a whole housing option away from housing outcome away from our usual tool set. However, this does compare to nationally, 40% nationally. So we are still better off there, but still it's causing a big problem. Competition is then raising. So then we see 19% increase in rents at a time when people really do not have the money to be able to meet that. Some examples in which I raise in the report is repossessions. We've been dealing over the last 12 months with 6 repossessions. We're expecting that to go up to 50 because of the amount of people who are going to struggle to pay their mortgages. It's not just the people who own their houses who may struggle. It's the people who own a house and rent it out, then can't meet the mortgage, less likely to pay the mortgage on a rental property than they are themselves. So that's the one that will go into default, and therefore they'll end up selling it. So that takes another outcome out. Also, rent arrears. We're already seeing 14 households within this year. We're expecting that then to go up and double at least, to go up to a number 28. So we're just seeing more and more demand coming through our service, and the outcomes which are available reducing, which means the throughput slows down, and therefore their stay in TA becomes longer. And that's where our challenge is, and that's where the cost comes. There is, in addition to the temporary accommodation, there is also, we still want to prevent homelessness as much as humanly possible. There's no point just having loads of temporary accommodation to essentially put people in. The best thing we can do is prevent them as much as possible. Within the report, we've spoken about staffing. This staffing is there from the core team to allow them to prevent as much as possible within the core service. There is an extra nod within the report because the more stock that we hold, the more we need to support people within that stock, make sure that they're searching that next outcome as much as possible, and are in the strongest position to do so. May need recruitment, they may need CV type writing, getting their welfare benefits in place. That's all the support that we offer. We are struggling as we stretch. Within the business case, there is the pricing, the cost to allow one extra member of staff to do that for every 10 units is accounted for within the business case. Another bit of clarification, just on 11.1 about the local authority who will have a main duty to that person, and where we look within the stock. Of course, we want to work as one team, and we want to make sure that we utilise that stock so there's never a vacancy within that. That wouldn't be the issue at all right now, just to point out. But we also want to work as one team. So there are situations where people will come to us, present, for example, to Broadland District Council. However, they may have a job in South Norfolk Council. So therefore, it may work out better that they are accommodated there. Another situation will be domestic abuse, where it's not safe for them to be accommodated in Broadland anymore. And we are in the advantageous position to be able to accommodate within another neighbouring district where they're safe, however, at a far more affordable rate. The key thing here, though, is where whoever holds the homeless duty is the paying authority. There is not going to be any subsidisation between the two. Just as one team, we are able to meet that need at a more affordable and justifiable manner. Okay, those are the only points that I wanted to raise, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Fran, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I do. I just think this is just something we have to do. Business as usual is just not an option. It's just not an affordable option, and it will give less advantageous choices to the people in our area. So this is about people really more than buildings, actually, this paper. And I just think that we've been pushed into a situation by lots of factors which are out of our control, but we need to react to that to make sure that we can balance the books really, because if we don't do that, we could be spending an inordinate amount of money. I mean, obviously we've had figures here, 1.7, 2.2 million pounds a year on temporary accommodation. Currently we're spending about £250,000 additionally on B&B. I mean, so it's just totally out of proportion. So we have to do something, and I think this is the right thing to do. And actually, owning property ourselves, we can manage it and ensure it's of the right quality for the people we want to look after. So I say predominantly this is about people rather than buildings, really, and also a strong business case, because just sitting where we are now is not affordable in the short or the long term. So I just think it's the right thing to do. So I will propose the recommendations as they are on page 175 with just a slight amendment, because this is about finance, ultimately buying houses, to remove myself, the portfolio holder for communities, housing and planning policy, from the delegated authority. So it would just be the 151 officer and the portfolio holder for finance. Obviously, I'll have discussions before we get to that point, but officially that's where we'll go for the sign off for the monies. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Fran. I think you want to leave the Assistant Director for Individuals and Families in as well, didn't you?
Sorry, yes,
Yes.
I do. No, sorry, I was just... Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely involved. But
He just breathed a big sigh of relief.
No. I was just remove me, not anyone else from the first the first recommendation.
Okay, no, thank you for that, Fran. Just to clarify that, Trudy.
Yes, thank you. I agree. This is a finance paper. However, there is a social side to it. And as Broadland always has the community at heart, we want to provide the best accommodation we can at the best value for all of the residents in the district. Just one thing I wanted to just mention to take into consideration when we're looking at the properties is regarding the carbon footprint, to make sure you talk to the environmental team. We want to know we can bring them up to standard and how much that's going to cost us, and whether it's going to alter the business case depending on the cost of it. So that's the only thing I would add to. We have discussed bringing them up to standard before, but I think we need to do that before we actually purchase the property. But other than that, I'm very happy to second the recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm reading the report. This is showing that Broadland are moving, they're proactively doing something as opposed to just seeing the revenue the cost spiral. We will actually be doing something proactively, which is using the capital, which will be a much better way forward. And I just think when you look at the figures, we can just see the figures going up and up and up unless we do something, and we're showing that we are going to be doing something, and that makes it a better proposal for everybody. Thank you.
Well said, Jonathan. Thank you. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a brilliant opportunity to buy this 21 unit property in Helsden. It will be far easier for officers to assist the residents of that property because they'll all be together. But there is a little bit of confusion in 9.3 about the figures. It says the targeted 43 units per council is a total. But then it says with the purchase of the 21 unit, existing 2 units at Mallard Way, this would leave 22 units remaining to purchase. Should that be 20, or are we looking for a target of actually having 45? Thank you.
That might be incorrect on maths. I'm just going to try and work out of my head, but the total target we're aiming for is the 43. It may be where the confusions come from is some of the figures I've used is because we're aiming for a 90% occupancy rate. So when I've worked out the maths, I've worked it out on having voids, because voids do naturally happen. You have to turn around the property. So I think that's where, sorry, the confusion might have happened on that paragraph, but 43 is the target.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions or points of clarity? Again, I just picking up the points that I've mentioned here, and I think, Fran, from your point of view with your portfolio, you see this very much as a people and a people issue, which is presenting to us through the team and the way in which that's coming forward. And I think, Trudy, you've brought this back into actually this is about the council doing something with that problem that's presenting to us. So we're being very strong. We're looking to the future. We're looking to invest to then resolve and have the problem have a solution for the problem, but also means that the council is financially stable going through that period of turmoil, for want of a better phrase. So, and I think the graph at 5.4 just shows that very clearly, with a nice break-even point, even in looks like somewhere between 26 and 27. But we'll see what that looks like when we get there. So, thank you for having the foresight and bringing this forward in this way, and enabling us to move this forward. So, you've got the recommendations before you on page 175 that have been proposed and seconded. Recommendation 2 has a slight amendment, just removing the portfolio holder for communities housing and planning policy from the delegated authority. But other than that, they're as written before you. Okay, yeah. Recommendation 1, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you for that. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 14, cost of living response at page 179. Over to you then, Kerry.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to present this alongside Ella, who is the Programme Manager for the cost of living work. So you won't have to hear my voice the entire time. That's the main thing. So this is very much the beginning of our approach to the work around the cost of living. It's very much at the forefront of people's minds at the moment, but actually this problem is going to continue with us for some time into the future, months and years ahead. What we've come to Cabinet today for is to make you aware of what's going on and see if you'd like to endorse our approach as opposed to make any decisions. This is very much at the forefront of people's minds, and it's quite an important thing that you guys are aware of. In terms of the cost of living and where we're in the period at the moment where we're seeing high inflation in things that people are feeling immediately. So energy costs, food, we've all seen that, I'm sure, and the cost of private transport around fuel and things like that. So they're immediate things that we're starting to see. In coming months, we imagine that we're going to see a much greater impact, as Rich has just talked about, in terms of housing and longer term items. We anticipate seeing the real brunt of this hitting in sort of April time. That's when we really imagine things will happen, not least because we're anticipating about 33% of households in Broadland in relative fuel poverty from April. And the impact of Christmas will hit, and the kind of rising costs that we will see, particularly debt and things like that, will start to land on people's doorsteps. So we're looking for that. We've been doing some work to identify our most vulnerable individuals that we think will be most likely to suffer ill effects of the cost of living crisis. Those are people dependent on benefits, low-income households, older people, particularly those with care needs, households with children. The more children you have, the worse that gets, lone parents, and households with at least one workless individual. Where there are more than one of those factors in play, then we will see a greater level of demand. So that helps us to think about which customers we might need to target and in which ways going forward. Ella's going to give a quick overview as to how we are structuring our approach.
So our overall aim for the programme is to enable our residents, employees and businesses to weather the impacts of the crisis now and in the future. And in terms of the overall strategic aim of the council, we see this as sort of growing our economy, supporting individuals and empowering communities, and protecting and improving the natural and built environment whilst maximising quality of life. So to deliver this aim, we've set up 3 groups. We have an internal strategic group, which is chaired by Jamie Sutterby, our Director of People and Communities. We have an external partner group, which is strategic and operational, which is headed up by Mark Hitchcock, who's the Chief Exec of Norfolk Citizens Advice. And we have an internal operational group, which is chaired by Kerry Gallagher. We have 4 work streams that fall under the programme. We have one for businesses, and that's sort of things like our Business Builder programme and the regulatory support that we have on offer. And we have one for staff, for which we're doing sort of frontline staff workshops. We have obviously our staff benefit scheme, which we're trying to maximise as well. And we have then 2 others, which are Living Well, and that really covers everything that's needed as a necessity for everyday life. So it's housing, energy, food, and household items. So, for example, housing would be sort of temporary accommodation, energy would be sort of the things we're doing with warm homes and warm spaces. And we have them participating in daily life. And so this is sort of really about engaging with the community and people going about their daily life as unaltered as they can. So it's things like community safety or our early intervention work, transport, so sort of encouraging community transport schemes, and maximising income. So it's the debt advice and welfare support that we're offering.
So there have been a few schemes which members in particular have been particularly interested in. So I thought that I'd just draw attention to a couple of those. You won't have to go very far to learn about warm spaces. We've offered a grant in Broadland recently. We now have warm spaces set up in a number of different places, Oldcat and Corston, Horsford, a couple in Aylsham. I've got a little list I can send round. What we were planning on doing at those is not only inviting residents to make use of them, but also target our support at those people that will attend those sessions. So directly interacting with those customers. At those points, we can advertise things like our energy rebate scheme, though it has just ended. We've got alternatives to that. We would advertise all of those sorts of things, household support fund that can directly impact them. There's also a heck of a lot of work going on at the moment around access to food, especially with the increase in costs. So as part of the Health and Wellbeing Healthy Living work stream, we're doing huge amounts of work to look at where we might be able to have social supermarkets in the district where the need is there. And we've identified Reefham and Acle as our priority areas for those. And we're also looking at having a grant which will provide organisations with an opportunity to undertake food-related activity, so for training, equipment, food stock, and that sort of thing. And we hope to release that at the end of this week. So there's just a couple of examples of the really practical stuff that the team are doing out in the community, alongside all of the usual stuff we do around getting access to funds and helping people with debt and budgeting and that kind of thing.
So I'm going to take over again just to talk about what we're monitoring and why. So most of the work we're doing with monitoring at the minute is really monitoring caseloads and incoming demand, and then trying to match that to our current capacity. And this is across all frontline service teams. This is sort of with the idea that as the crisis continues, we might have to start to prioritise resource allocation, identifying those households that sort of fall into vulnerable groups. So we need to sort of know what our capacity is across those teams. And we're also sort of trying to use our LIFT, which is our low income family tracker tool, to achieve that identification of households. In terms of sort of monitoring the actual impact of what we're doing as well, we are starting to try to gather qualitative data through questionnaires, especially on the work that we're doing around the Household Support Fund, and we're sort of intending to do so as well for our Cold Homes Poor Health project.
Final point from me is around comms. We've just given you a whole host of information. It's incredibly confusing to people. I work in the system every day and I still can't remember all the stuff that's available to people. So in terms of comms, there's going to be a really clear message that will go out starting from the end of this week. We're going to run a campaign through December, and then into January, the message will change slightly around kind of ways to best manage money and make the best of the situation effectively. And all of that stuff will be channeled through the Help Hub. Although in the back of that, actually, it will go to lots of different teams, but keeping that message for customers is going to be really, really vitally important. And we've also done some stuff around our website to try and make that as easily and as user friendly as humanly possible to, again, make things much, much simpler for everybody else. So hopefully that will start to really help customers to navigate a very complex social system. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And around your communication aspect, I believe there's a page or two in the next Broadland News that covers the Help Hub and some of the things that can be done that will be out in December.
It's services that are being provided by a whole host of teams, but just trying to keep that message as simple as possible for residents, because they just want to know they can get helped, not necessarily who does it.
Okay, thank you. Fran?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I think communication's key, and I was really, really pleased. I thought you did a great presentation, actually, at the Town and Parish Council Forum. I think you really did get across to people how important it was that, you know, with that two-way sharing of information, because, I mean, some people came straight forward about pots of money for ex-servicemen, for instance, you know, so I think it's really, really important. There are pots of money out there which could help us to help other people, so I think that's fantastic. and the joint working that we're doing with through the Health and Wellbeing Partnership is just proving dividends. I mean, well, we've said it so many times, but people have been working in silos for so many years, and we're putting people together now and actually sharing that expertise and sharing that money to make it go further. So we're doing, well, more with less. Coin a phrase, perhaps, but I just think it's so important that we recognise this and how important this is. And actually, in a previous paper, in item 11, we're talking about measure 15, supporting vulnerable people. The numbers there are extraordinary, really. If you look at the last 2 years, we've been looking at this point of the year, you know, in Q2, about 1,500 people. We're now at about 2,500. You know, people that we've helped. So you can see straight away through those figures that the numbers have gone up, and that's without going into, dare I say, more difficult times, which I think we're looking at over the next 6 months, if not longer. You know, so I really welcome this paper, and I heartily propose. I'm happy to propose recommendations on page 193, 7.11 and 2. Thank you. So keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you for that, Fran. Jonathan?
Yep, I'll second that. And it is an excellent piece of work to show how we are, again, leading the way as a council to support our residents. And I think, you know, we have had the COVID crisis, and we did do extremely well when we were looking at how we were supporting residents there. The cost of living crisis, it is worrying a lot of people. There are a lot of different things to worry about. And like it's been said, there is a lot of help out there, but we just need to make sure people know where to go for it. So this is a piece of work which helps us to get that help to the people that need it. So I think it's excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. Trudy?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'd just like to thank the team regarding the warm spaces. Thorpe St Andrew has been successful in 2 applications, and the feedback I have is that it's extremely quick and easy to apply for. So really, people do need to. They couldn't believe how simple it was. So thank you for that. Definitely pleased to see about the comms message going out. I think a single point of contact is essential so that everybody is helped somehow. And something else might be identified that another area can be helped. So I think that's absolutely essential. And I would say all the way through the paper, you can see what the one team have delivered, but what they've paid out. There's the finances all the way through this paper. I mean, the energy rebate scheme, as a for instance, more than 50,000 grants over 7.5 million has gone out the door. That's all added work for the officers. So yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Trudy. Any other points, Joe?
Yeah, thank you, Kerry and Ella. This is absolutely brilliant report. I really enjoyed reading that, and it's really good for our members to understand exactly what's out on offer there. And I was really pleased to see 4.11 business support, and it talks about the business builder scheme that will help startups, but also help our businesses decarbonise a bit and maybe save some money on their energy bills, which is really great. And just for a note, it says that funding comes from the Norfolk Shared Prosperity Fund. That is actually incorrect. It's the Norfolk Strategic Fund. And I don't want anyone to be confused between that and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. But no, absolutely excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for pointing out that. Make sure we get it from the right fund, but funding is there. Okay, so any other questions, points of clarity? Judy?
No, can I just add my congratulations to the work that the team are doing, and thank you very much. And certainly they all came over very well on the parish council's forum on Monday, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, well done.
Thank you. As the cabinet has said, it is just hats off to the team and what they've done and what they're achieving. And I think 5.1 picks it up in the risks and issues because there's sufficient resource to do it. You're actually managing within the budget you've got with the funding that's coming forward that you've brought forward and you're using and optimizing it in the best possible way. So thank you for doing that. Okay, so the recommendations are on page 193, 7.11 and 7.12 have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. That moves us on
Chair.
then to item 15, the antisocial behaviour policy, which starts at page 194.
Chair, good evening.
Good evening, Nick. Over to you.
Thank you very much. No numbers attached to this policy, being a policy of intent rather than a summary of activity delivered so far. Well, I'm sure we could offer you some numbers if you'd like further down. But just to say then, this report presents a new antisocial behaviour policy for adoption. And it applies to a number of services across the councils, and primarily those are in regulatory services and in individuals and families services. Documenting this policy serves two key purposes for us and the council. Firstly, to establish a documented framework informing the approach we take towards antisocial behaviour and how we will deal with that working with partner organisations. Secondly, to provide information and assurance to those that we serve and those who we have to work with when we come to deal with antisocial behaviour. The Environmental Excellence Policy Development Panel's considered over time the service delivery experience for antisocial behaviour, antisocial behaviour principles, prevention and enforcement approaches, and finally a range of policy implications before this policy comes forward to you. And just to draw two specific points to your attention, firstly, at paragraph 4.2 of the report, there's a range of inclusions within the policy, from antisocial behaviour definitions and policy aims and objectives, through to a systematic prioritisation approach, clear responsibilities, commitments around victim support, vulnerability and safeguarding, which are integral to dealing with antisocial behaviour, prevention enforcement, and how we'll work with our partners. So that's at paragraph 4.2. Now, this policy is designed to take a fresh, more documented format, but I must say that many of these approaches are ones that are familiar to the council already. So it's not an entirely new approach to antisocial behaviour, but having that codified has been identified as helping us as we go forward in a more robust approach to antisocial behaviour, which unfortunately is on the increase slightly in the area. Finally, paragraph 6.3 under equality implications, this proposed policy does include specific considerations to balance our engagement when we're dealing with vulnerable people, such as victims or even perpetrators of antisocial behaviour. But we haven't identified any impacts on any individuals with specific characteristics for which the equality implications apply. So we've been careful to balance those considerations out. Finally, Chair, just to say, recommendation is that Cabinet recommends Council to agree the adoption of the proposed antisocial behaviour policy at Appendix 1.
Okay, thank you for that, Nick. Question on that recommendation before we move on. As it's a policy, usually Cabinet sets policy, and I'm just wondering why Cabinet's recommending to Council.
In the development of this policy, because of the broad encompassing arrangement and frame of the policy, we felt that it sat as part of the policy framework and the Constitution rather than just an execution type policy. So for that reason, we identified that it would go to Council, but be guided either way.
Okay, so help me out here. Why is that then? Because you said we.
Yes, with reference to the Constitution and where the broad policy framework would normally sit. So, for example, the overarching enforcement policy went to for full council adoption. So we followed the similar format as to where this policy would go.
Okay.
I don't know if that helped you very much.
No, just surprised to see that it's as its policy, it's going from Cabinet to Council rather than Cabinet just adopting it. That's all.
Yeah,
it's delegated to do so for the council. Someone
help
me out
here.
here.
To be guided.
So when we talked this policy through, my understanding was that the way that it's been the way that it's been proposed are changes and amendments to the current policy. Therefore, council sets your framework within which Cabinet you then operate. Therefore, as this is making amendments to that, council need to sign off the policy framework. If this was tweaks and slight amendments, then absolutely it would be a cabinet decision. But because this is setting a new framework, then it needs to go into council, because council has the power to set that framework.
And where is it altering that framework? Because I can't see that in the report, that's all.
Because we don't have an existing antisocial behaviour policy in place, it's setting that framework for the first time in this area.
Okay. I'm not really convinced, but I'll go with it because that seems to be the advice I'm getting. Been glared at now. Okay, so thank you for that, Nick. Judy. Anything you want to add to that, Terry? No? Okay. Thank you, Judy. Over to you, Judy.
Right. This policy has been through the EP and ONS, and also the police and housing associations have been consulted. I mean, the aim is quite clear in 1.2 and the purpose clear in 2.3. Is providing a framework by which the officers will carry out their work. So it says when we will help and when we won't, which is just as important. And I draw people's attention to paragraph section 3 in the policy, which lists these occurrences. I know from being a town councillor that early intervention can help, but I also appreciate that some antisocial behaviour activity is so serious and it's beyond the scope of this and has to be dealt with by the police. So I would like to propose the recommendation, unless you've found something else in the paper just now, that the cabinet recommend to council to agree the adoption of the proposed antisocial behaviour policy, which is at Appendix 1 in your papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Judy. No, we've had that conversation, so we'll carry on as we are. Fran?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm very happy to second this. I think, as you say, it just regularises it, so we know what we are doing and what we're not doing, which is clear for us, and it's clear for our residents too. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other points, questions, clarity? No? Okay, so the recommendations are 8.1 on page 199, which have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, so that moves us on then to the Rural England Prosperity Fund, starting at page 217. God, we've passed the double century mark. Good evening. So who's leading off?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out a piece of really good news that central government have allocated Broadland District Council some capital funding as a legacy of Brexit and leader funding that traditionally came out to local authorities. So the purpose of the report is to seek approval from Cabinet for an application, essentially, they called an addendum to the Shared Prosperity Fund application that we submitted in September. The deadline for the addendum is tomorrow, the 30th. And within that, we have set out how we propose to spend and allocate the 569,552 over a 2-year period. The two proposals that are before you include some funding for business grants. That's the larger of the two sections, and that's about 319,000, where businesses will apply in a competitive way for grants up to £25,000 each, which will be run and looked after with some good governance around that to make sure it's all transparent. And the second The second opportunity is for a piece of equipment that would otherwise not be available to our food and drink processing businesses to be made available at the Broadland Food Innovation Centre. And we have recommended up to £250,000 for a significant piece of equipment for those businesses who would otherwise not have access to it. I'll leave it there for any other questions, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you for that, Nina. George, anything you want to add?
Just thank Nina for going through some of the details. This is a great opportunity to support our rural businesses, and the interventions we're proposing are as part of a holistic package of support that we're offering at Broadland Council. It complements the Business Builder programme in a way that we think is beneficial to those businesses, and also we're helping to break down some of those barriers to entry for some of those more competitive markets, particularly around food. And we know that agri-tech is a key sector for us to develop in Broadland.
Thank you for that. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm so pleased to get this funding, nearly 570,000 from DEFRA to support our rural economy. It's really important funding, and it's capital funding, which doesn't come around very often for our businesses. So I would like to make the recommendation 6.1 to 6.4 on page 222. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Joe? Trudy?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to say actually how happy I am to see the recommendation regarding purchasing a piece of equipment. I don't know if many of you have seen, I've been watching a series of programs, I won't mention the name of the supermarket, looking for new products from local people. And one of the biggest problems they have to scaling up to be able to get into a supermarket is something like the machinery that you were talking about. And that has been repeated weekly over 6 weeks or so of these programs. It can obviously be used for other businesses, not necessarily just the people in the Food Innovation Centre. And we know canning, for instance, goes off to the Midlands and there's queues of waiting to use this machinery. So I'm really happy to see that in there, and I'm therefore more than happy to second the recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. Any other questions or points? Sorry? Yeah, no, it seems, like say, a useful thing to come forward to make use of, and to use these grants in the right way. So, okay, so the recommendations are on page 222, 6.1 through to 6.4. All those in favour? Thank you for that. Okay, so that moves us on then to item 17, the electric vehicle charging point installation on council-owned land, starting at page 224. And George has a change of team. He's brought on his subs.
Yeah, good evening.
So you starting with Zanny?
Yeah, good evening. I think that you're probably all familiar with me, but I've also got Kirsty Burns here, who's the environmental coordinator, who's been instrumental in putting together the environmental strategy and delivery plan, which I think we're coming on to in the next item. So this report in front of you today seeks the relevant approvals to enable the installation of electric vehicle charging point infrastructure within council-owned and managed car parks. So this project will contribute towards the delivery of a publicly accessible EVCP network in Broadland, and is an important way to reduce on-road emissions and will support in achieving the government's net zero 2050 targets. So as per 1.2 of the report in front of you today, it's proposed that the council does this by awarding a contract to a third-party supplier for an end-to-end delivery solution. So that sounds a bit jargony, but what that means is that suppliers are responsible for funding and then delivering all of the necessary civil engineering works, as well as the ongoing management and maintenance of those EVCPs on council-owned land. The suppliers would also own those EVCP units. Any chosen supplier would pay the council an annual licence fee for those EVCPs, and it's proposed that at the end of the licence fee term, there'll be an opportunity for the council to have that EVCP infrastructure transferred to them. So that's really the basis of the proposal within the report today. And I'm happy to pause there and take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for that, Annie. Joe, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a very easy way for the council to get ahead and roll out EV charging points in our council-owned car parks. EV charging has changed quite a lot over the last few years, and we've seen councils that have put their own EV charging in having to update them quite quickly. So I think having a third-party supplier is the way forward. So I would like to propose the recommendations to Cabinet 6.1 to 6.3 on page 227. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Judy?
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to second this proposal. We've talked about electric vehicle charging points for some time, so it's great to see a paper before us that gives a way of doing it quite quickly and getting the charging in place. So I'm very happy to second the proposal.
Thank you for that, Judy. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. I got one. Recommendation 6.3 talks about the solar canopy carports coming in phase 2. Do we have a timescale for phase 2? Because we have been waiting for that one since 2019.
Yeah, so we'd like to get some options in front of you in the new year for that.
So 2023, early 2023.
Yeah, early 2023.
Good. Okay, sorry. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, recommendations are on page 227, 6.1 through to 6.3. They've been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, that moves us on then to item 18, the environmental strategy and delivery plan, starting at page 228.
Okay, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to outline the changes to the environmental strategy and then to recommend the approval and adoption of the updated strategy and then the associated delivery plan. So just very briefly to summarise, the current environmental strategy and action plan was adopted in 2020. So the documents in front of you today are revised and they've been drafted to demonstrate the Council's achievements to date, but also to set more ambitious environmental targets. A delivery plan document has also been created, and this is a companion document, and it outlines the activities that are going to take place over the next 2 years to support net zero commitments, but also to address wider actions in terms of climate change and environmental breakdown. The environmental strategy and delivery plan documents will be living documents, so they'll be updated regularly to ensure that they continue to address local priorities and opportunities. And then lastly, as mentioned within the recommendations in this report, in 2021, an environmental project reserve was set up to fund activities associated with the delivery of projects in the environmental strategy. This report proposes to amend that delegation from the Assistant Director for Regulatory to the Assistant Director for Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for environmental excellence. Again, I'll pause there and take any questions if you've got them.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy?
Right. Yes. So firstly, I'd like to thank the team for updating the document. I think we've gone a long way in the 2 years. And we know a lot more about what we're trying to do. And most importantly, we've set our net zero target for the council to be 2030. So the strategy gives us an opportunity to actually demonstrate what we have achieved and to say how we're going to work towards these more ambitious targets. The strategy and the action plan, as Annie has said, is a living document, so we expect to see that updated as and when necessary, and they will both be on the website. It actually highlights some of the challenges, but what this version does is also to talk about how we can be an enabler and an encourager to businesses. And by that, we'll be working towards the broader target of 2050, or the later target, I should say, of 2050, for net zero across the whole district. Anyway, once again, I say thank you very much to the team for producing it. And I propose we adopt the recommendations which are on page 228.
Okay, thank you for that. Judy, Trudy?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the strategy. It looks amazing. It really does. Really good job. I think it also shows with our target of 2030, it shows our target is achievable. We're not just virtue signaling. We actually will get there. I'm confident of that. And it also embeds everything into the culture of the whole organisation. So you can see every department now will be involved in this. And I think that's the first time we've seen that. And so, yeah, again, thank you very much. And I'm very happy to second it.
Okay, thank you for that. Jonathan?
Yeah, well, we've just had COP27, and I think that the world was saying we need to do more. We do see it said many times by by lots of councils to say that we should be doing something. But for me, one of the main problems I see is that there's a lot of people saying we should be doing something, not actually doing something. And I feel that, we are leading the way. And I was saying last year, obviously the move to the Horizon building was a big step. The new waste contract is another big step. We're actually physically looking at what we can do. And I think that is a real positive thing for our residents to see, so that as we move forward for a District 2050 target, that they can see all the work we're doing, as opposed to us saying to businesses, we want you to do, we are saying we have done, can you follow? And I think it just shows that we are leading the way again. And it's an excellent piece of work. And I hope the comms to get this out to residents to show that instead of just talking about it, we are acting, really is pushed so that everybody knows. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Jonathan, any other? Fran?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just looking at page 246, it's NZB3, about our objective to assist residents and communities to make a switch. And I just thought that there's something we need to look at outside of this department, dare I say, and look at planning, for instance, with car clubs and charging points being built into new estates. So as we look at the plans, we actually sort of build that in. So I just think it's something we need to talk about, to ensure that planning, we are looking at that when we look at any new plans, and we get that in place too, because that will assist this and assist everyone else. So I just thought that's something that we should consider and well put in there, I would anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Fran. It's a good point, because some of the neighbourhood plans in Broadland actually have tree canopy percentages in them as delivery policies. So again, that'd be something that perhaps can be replicated through our own planning policies. So yeah. Any other points? No. Again, I'd just like to reiterate the document has moved considerably from where it was, and thank you for doing that. It just really highlights now the journey we've been on, the struggle we've had to get our heads around what it is we want to do and how we want to do it. And that's now succinctly put in the document, which is well presented and readable as such. So thank you for doing that for us. The action plan clearly sets out where we're going and the journey that we're on. And it's not going to be easy, but if it's worth doing, it probably isn't going to be easy. But will get us to a good place, and certainly to our 2030 target of being net zero, which is quite something for a council to do. The recommendations are on page 231, 8.1, 2 and 3 have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. That moves us on to the forward plan on page 292. And you had the forward plan before you. Is there any comments on that? do we just note that as it is? Don't all rush. Okay, so we'll take that as it is. Again, lots of activity on there for us to do, lots of things moving forward. That moves us on then to item 20, which is the exclusion of the press and public. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006 would be disclosed to them. Gave you plenty of time to get in the chair, didn't it? Yeah.